You're listening to Ask When, the podcast. Folks from all walks of life talk about their daily hustle and bustle, living and celebrating life, sharing tips on becoming champions, especially for those who are muscling mental and physical disabilities. Ask When, the podcast, with your host who has mustered over 30 years living with cerebral palsy and going strong. Author and cerebral palsy advocate Wynn Charles. Ask When, the podcast starts right now.
Welcome to Ask When, everyone. Today with me I have Alex, and I was lucky enough to see Alex speak at Podfest when I took my early spring break. I took an early spring break, not to go on spring break, but to enhance my podcast. And I was lucky enough to hear Alex speak. I was sitting in the back of the room, and he spoke on how to use a blog, yes, a blog, for your podcast. And so you can still use the written word in a blog and use it to get leads to your podcast. And I just thought, well, this is fascinating. And so then I contacted Alex via Facebook. And of course, Alex was a little bit hesitant because he's such a phenomenal speaker that he said, get back to me. And I said, Alex, the proof is in the pudding. And he said, yes, then yes. So I'm going to let Alex take it away and explain his story. And so, Alex, take it away.
Wynn, thanks for the introduction there. And I was a little bit hesitant at first. I always like to challenge people that ask me to be on their podcast. I knew I wanted to be on yours, but I wanted to see why you wanted me to be on it first. I always like to make sure there's a reason, because some people are like, well, I don't know. You look like you'd be cool to have on the podcast. I'm like, nope, not a good enough reason. But you had a good reason. So I'm really happy to be here, and I was honored that you came and heard me speak. So thank you so much for that. And yeah, like you said, you can use a blog to grow your podcast, believe it or not. Maybe we'll get into that a little bit. A little bit of background about me. Many years ago, when I got into this space, I sat down in front of a computer and I started blogging. Was how I got my start. I was scared to death looking at that blank Word document on my computer. Coming out of school, I was somebody who maybe vowed to myself subconsciously that I was never going to write again. I decided I was done with that. That was something that was my past. It wasn't for me. I was never a great writer. But for some reason, I found myself sitting in front of this computer on that day. And I just started writing, and believe it or not, it actually made sense. And then more people than just my mom wanted to read it. So that was a huge plus as well. And ever since then, I've been a content creator. I've just kind of become addicted with it. I love podcasting. I love blogging. I love social media. All these different things are things that have come natural to me and I thoroughly enjoy. And most recently, I've really decided I love building community, a digital community. So community online through social media platforms, really off of the big social media on their own platforms. And that's kind of what I do with creating a brand, but we might get into that a little bit later. But either way, I love helping other people that are creators and just helping them to achieve their goals. And Wynn, that is me in a nutshell right there.
Wow, that is phenomenal. And Alex, can you give the speech you gave at Podfest in a nutshell on this podcast? Because even though I don't use a blog myself because I can't type due to my cerebral palsy, well, I can, but I choose not to. And so could you please explain to people why they should probably dig out the old blog and transform it and make show notes out of it?
Yeah, for sure. The old blog, Wayne, come on. I love blogging. I'll jump into that for you real quick here. This is a topic I'm passionate about. So Wayne, cut me off when it is time. All right. I'll try to keep this really brief here.
Okay.
But basically, again, going back to the blogging days, 10 years ago, that was your only option. That was how you got noticed on the internet. And it was really easy to do. And coming from somebody who started blogging many years ago, I believe it was actually maybe 8 years ago is when I sat down to write my first post. Somebody who was doing it that long ago, I can see the difference between then and now. However, it is still the easiest way to get recognized through search engines is through a blog. And I've found this to be really true along the way in my journey. So when I started podcasting, I said, you know what? I'm going to see if I can use a blog similar to how I write a normal post to see if I can grow a podcast audience. And it worked. Creating a Brand Podcast is a top 20 entrepreneurship podcast. And a lot of that is thanks to the website that we put together. And a lot of people now struggle. They're like, okay, well, do I need it? You don't need it, but it does help. It gives people a great call to action. And one of the main benefits of it is you can do a little bit less advertising on the actual podcast episode, because I find a lot of people go really heavy into the ads. But here's the thing. If you've ever tried to buy a car, if a salesperson called you on the phone and started describing the car to you, you wouldn't be too interested. You'd have to actually see it. You have to sit in it. And so what having a blog allows you to do is take it beyond just audio. So if I'm trying to explain to you the ad or the call to action that I want you to invest in, if I can actually show it to you, if I can say, hey, go to this website and type this in and check it out and tell me what you think, then you're actually seeing it. It's a little bit more visual than just me telling you, okay, it's this, this, and this is what you got to do. It could be something I can show you pictures of it, screenshots, give you a very easy call to action instead of, just trying to get you from a podcast. So I found that was really good. And also building community. It's a lot easier to build community through comments because podcasting is very one-dimensional. When you and I are having a great conversation today, no one else can just join in this conversation. However, if you have a website, a hub with a comment section, people can actually contribute after the podcast. So something that I do on my podcast right now is I ask a question at the end of it. And I say, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Please leave me a comment. And what they'll do is they'll go to my blog and they'll be able to leave me a comment or even fill out a poll that I might have going that time or multiple choice type of thing. Either way, I have a call to action that engages people and gets them involved in what I'm doing. And I find that that's like the big benefit of it. And now for the kind of transition here, when it's how to do it, there's no right or wrong way. I think a lot of people think you need to do full show notes. It needs to be like transcribed, or it needs to be very detailed or have timestamps. It doesn't need all that. It can be as simple or as complex as you want it. What's important is figuring out what you get good feedback from your audience. It's got to always have the audience in mind. You can't just say, okay, I'm going to do this, this, and this, because I've tried all kinds of things. I've tried short bullet points, high level notes. What I found is the best for me is having the resources and having the comment section and a great picture that goes along with it and maybe a couple quotes throughout. And that's what works for me. You might find that your audience wants a full transcription, but whatever it is what's most important. So there's no right or wrong way to do it. And then the last benefit, when I hope I'm keeping this brief enough. I don't know if I'm going over on this thing.
You are. No.
All right,
you
good.
Are.
The last benefit that I'll mention is when you're sharing a podcast with somebody via text on social media, if you send them straight to Apple, like the link to apple.com or it has your podcast page, if someone doesn't have an iPhone, then it's really difficult for them to view that. And they can't open the podcast app because they don't have it. So there's a lot of downsides to sending someone directly to those type of things. However, if you have a blog post, one, you can make a really nice image. And over most smartphones now, the image will come into the text message. So people also see your very nice image that you made to go with it. And we share on social media, same thing. The picture will populate from the blog post. So it makes it much more attractive for people to click on other than just a bunch of numbers and letters saying, here, this is a new blog post. It makes it look really attractive. And I've found for me, it is quadruple the amount of people that will actually click on it versus just having a general link. So that's really it, Win. I mean, there's a lot more I go into. Obviously, that was like an hour talk that I just summarized in just a few minutes here. But if there's any specifics you want to get into, we can dive into that more, of course.
And I was going to say, and I now that I have a lot more time on my hands, thank you very much, I should probably do a blog along with podcast, and be careful what I say because Alex will probably hold me to it.
I will hold you accountable, Win. I'm checking next week.
Alex will probably hold me to it. Yes. But as I was going to say, because people who are deaf and blind and disabled, oh dear Lord, I just mentioned blind. And the reason why I'm saying that is because JAWS is the typical screen reader that people use when they have blindness. And so it's going to be easier to have screen readers read out blogs than it is a podcast. You dummy, you dummy win. Yeah, at the top of, yeah, why didn't I think of this? I sat in it's the funniest thing. I sat in speech, Alex, and I'm like, you dummy, you dummy, you dummy, you dummy. Why didn't you
That's
think
not what I
of
was
this
going for, Win.
before?
That is not what I was going for.
Because of reasons. I am disabled. I can't. I'm a 100% audio learner, but I'm realizing now that these screen readers have a hard time reading not only reading text they do, but they have a hard time reading podcast links. And the deaf, I love my deaf community dearly. They couldn't grasp a podcast anyway because they can't physically hear it.
Right.
And so
That's where a transcription comes into play, where you can have the whole thing where someone
uh,
can actually read it. I mean, accessibility is becoming so important, especially if you want to include everybody. And when I know that
oh,
you've done a good job of including people in your community, which I admire greatly. But we got to have that accessibility for people that
yes.
maybe aren't as
Yeah,
fortunate as us.
yes, yes. And I sat in the back of the room and I'm like, I almost put my pop the brakes off my wheelchair and rolled out of the room with my head between my legs because I'm like, Win, you just did something for your own community. That so watch out, you guys. I may be sending. I shouldn't say I may. I will be sending up a blog in the next couple of weeks and sharing it on social media because I almost, as I said, I almost popped the bikes off on my wheelchair and rolled out of Alex's speech with my head held in shame because I'm like, oh, you just learned. I was in there because I wanted to see if you would get clickbait. I come out of that speech like, oh, when you just did a whole different level for your own community, handicapped accessibility. Oh boy. Yeah. Oh boy. Alex taught me a lesson big time. So watch out, you guys. I will be creating a blog and I will be putting my own thoughts on that blog and maybe making a reflection of the podcast because now what I'm realizing after Alex spoke is that the screen readers and the deaf and all the assistive technologies have a easier time reading blogs than they do a podcast.
Yeah, actually, I want to say one more thing, and then I have a question for you if you don't mind.
Yeah.
I mean, the podcast, it's called Ask Win. I have to be able to ask you questions, right?
Yes. Yes.
Before I ask that, though, I want to mention that transcriptions, they're fairly inexpensive now. There's some places you can go and you can get it for, I mean, it costs almost nothing to transcribe an entire podcast episode. But also, I have Microsoft, so I use a Windows computer. And Microsoft Word has it's called a dictate option where it'll actually listen to whatever's playing on your screen and it'll automatically do it for you. And that's free. So there's a lot of options out there to actually get your content dictated or to get a full transcription. And it doesn't cost you anything anymore. So if that's a route that people want to take, that's a good way to do it. Now, that was just a little bonus there, but onto my question here. How have you seen the accessibility change over the last few years? Because I feel like people and companies are really starting to open up to the idea of offering more forms of content for accessibility reasons. Have you seen it change a lot over the last couple of years?
Well, Amazon, the biggest company out there, Amazon, and I'll call you out again publicly. Amazon, you're the worst at publishing books.
Are they really?
I have actually talked to disabled authors, and they tell me the same thing that these screen readers can't read the the black text on the yellow buttons to help people publish books. And Amazon is the worst at accessibility. The church websites. Sorry about that, Alex. My phone.
Oh, you're fine.
And so, Maxwell Ivy, the blind blogger, said it was either the Jehovah's Witness website. Church websites are coming around the bend. Public websites are not so much anymore because public websites are public websites. The LDS church, I can find my way around that. Around that, like there's no tomorrow. They make it handicapped accessible, but churches I have seen more handicapped friendly than anything else. But we're slowly but surely working on it, and it's one of my big pet peeves that a website isn't handicapped accessible. It's it's one of my big pet peeves because, as I said earlier, that I need to do more for the accessibility community, disabled community, because I'm at the top of my field now, and people are looking to me, and yet they can't listen to my content because they either are deaf, they either blind, so they need a screen reader to see what the heck is on my podcast.
Right.
And so it's like, okay, now I need to do a blog. And Alex, you're the one that kicks me in the butt to do this because you're the one that talks about it, and I'm like, oh boy.
Yeah. Hey, I'm really glad I could help with that.
Yeah.
And here's the thing about that I've learned about accessibility and about websites, and this is a win-win for everybody. A win-win-win because it's a win for you. Win. Yeah, right. Exactly. So the simpler your website is, the easier it is to set up, but also the more accessible it usually is.
Yeah.
So you don't need something that's super like polished, super beautiful. You can just go to WordPress and get a simple website that's going to be fairly accessible at this point because WordPress is really big with that these days. And a lot of church websites are built on that. And that's probably why you've experienced that win. But it only takes a little bit of time to set up. I mean, I have 2 free courses on how to do it. And it doesn't even take an hour to do. And so if anyone's like, oh man, now I got to have a blog, if they're listening to this saying that, the truth is it doesn't take long to get set up and to start using. No. I mean, in less than a couple hours, you could be up and running and sharing content whenever you want. And that's just a benefit for you. I mean, you might as well do it. And then, you make an image, you go to canva.com, it's free.
Yeah.
You make an image template and you're good to go. It's smooth sailing after that. So this is not a giant commitment, but it is really important as we're both talking about today, Win.
Yeah, because now that we have time on our hands, it's
right.
It's good for us
to
step it up, and for me to step it up in the disabled community. So, you guys, look for this blog in the next couple of weeks, and you're like, oh, when she's got to step it into the projects. No, it's to go along with the podcast, like Alex said, because a screen reader is going to have an easier time reading a blog than actual podcast. I mean, I have the blind community listening to my podcast. I know it, but I'm surprised that a screen reader could do figure out the contents of a podcast. But yeah, so yes, people, we're gonna make this blog happen. And so, Alex, where can people find you? And do you have any more questions for me?
Yeah. First off, where people can find me, the easiest way is to go to creatingabrand.com, or another option that I set up just for your audience today, Win, is you can just text the word win to 1-904-299 8992. Again, text the word win to 1904-299-8992. And I'll text you back with a link to those WordPress courses we talked about so you can get started with a blog and also how to write a great blog post. I'll do that completely for free. I don't even want your email address or anything like that. That's just because I admire Win. I appreciate everything that she does. So I wanted to give this away for free to her audience today.
Awesome,
So,
Alex.
yeah.
Awesome. And you guys, when you hear this episode in the next couple of weeks, Alex will still have that offer for you. And those of you that do use text, take Alex up on that offer because we're going to dig out the old RSS feeds and make them modern again and use them in conjunction with audio because that's the way we do it and that's the way I should have done it all the way along. And so, yeah. And so that's the way I should have done it all the way along. But that's now I know. That's what I'm
Exactly.
going to do. Now
You know,
I know.
you can really never look back and, and wish you did something different. I mean, I guess you can, but it's not healthy. It's just pick up where you are today, get better every single day. And that's all we can do. I definitely didn't do this right when I started. It took me a lot of trial and error to get to where I am today. So every day you just keep on finding new ways to get better and better and you just go after it. And when I know that you're a go-getter, so I know that you're the type of person that's going to make that happen. So I admire that. I love it.
Exactly. Now, do you have any more questions for me?
Yes, the first one, you're gonna have to cut me off at some point, Win, because I'm a talker. But the first one I want to mention is because you were talked about how we were both at Podfest. That's where you heard me speak. Outside of my session that we already talked about, what was your biggest takeaway from one podcaster to another? I'd love to hear something that you learned about the future of media or something like that, or where this whole thing's going. I just want to hear your big takeaway.
Oh, you just want to hear my big takeaway. My big takeaway, and this is something I now have to implement before this as a person kills me. Kim Sutton, who runs the Positive Productivity podcast. I was actually lucky enough to watch her speak and be in her presentation. Thank you very much.
Nice,
Don't ask,
cool.
because I was on her podcast sharing my story, and I believe it's still on the feed. But she said that Pinterest is one of the big takeaways for podcasters now because people share, just like they do a blog post, people share pins on Pinterest, and it attracts more downloads than just a simple links to a podcast.
Wow, that's interesting. Okay.
So that's one of my big takeaways. And I didn't realize that Pinterest was so huge. I knew that blogging was not a dying art, but I didn't realize that the next big thing is Pinterest.
Yeah, I have to say for me, Pinterest has been where I've spent the least time out of all the. I know it's more of a search engine now than social media, but I've spent such little time there. I've never really found the draw to it. But
and
now I'm listening to you, and now I got to call to action. Now I got to do this too, Win.
And I'm like, oopsies, Kim. There we go. You got two people now on Pinterest because Kim is a Pinterest coach, and so that's all she does. Business strategist, but her main focus is on Pinterest. And she goes, well, people use Pinterest. And it's like, really? People use Pinterest? I knew it as a search engine. I'm like you, Alex. I knew it as a search engine. And so that's when I walked away with my head held in shame. I'm like, oh, great. Great. Go on my spring break. Learn a lot. And yeah, so.
I'll tell you what, I'm going to hold you accountable to starting your blog. You're going to hold me accountable to starting Pinterest. All right.
Yes,
so we'll make sure that we check up on each other here.
We'll just check up on each other. And how great. So do you have any more questions for me? One more and then I'll let you go.
one more. I better make it a good one then. Yeah, I'd like to hear what made you decide to get into podcasting. What was the reason that you decided to do this?
Well, I wrote a book, and at the time I was listening to podcasts to help me figure out how to publish that book. And that book is still available on Amazon, you guys. And so I thought, well, how the heck am I going to market this book? And at the time, I didn't want to collect Amazon dust. And so I thought, okay, I'll start a YouTube channel. Well, I tried that and I didn't get very far with that because a fan told me that even though she loved me, she couldn't keep her computer on to watch my show. And so then I said, okay, back to the drawing board. How am I going to build a fan base around my work? And how am I going to build a fan base around cerebral palsy? And so then I quickly stumbled on, I went back to my writing podcast. And then one day I was bored. And so I typed in cerebral palsy. There was absolutely nothing. And I'm not kidding when I
Wow.
say nothing. And this was back in 2010. And there was absolutely nothing on cerebral palsy. I thought, bingo, the lights went off. I'm like, bingo, that's how I how I started this, and I kicked it off with one of my heroes, Joanna Penn of the Creative Penn podcast. And yes, that interview is still floating around somewhere when I interviewed her. And then it's been ever since. It's been rolling ever since.
I love it. Do you feel like you're a better, sorry, I'm adding another question now. I'll keep
Yeah,
it brief though. Do you feel like you're a better interviewer now than you were when you first started?
I was because that first episode I was so nervous that you could hear it in my voice, and I am a much better interviewer than I am now, and I will be a much better blogger because of
Yeah.
people holding me to it.
I'll tell you what, I wanted to mention that because when I first started podcasting as well, people hear me now and they're like, man, you are like, people are like, you're awesome at this. Like, you sound so confident. If you go back and you can find my first episodes, when I'm not proud of them, they sound a little, you can hear me sounding nervous and like stuttering and stuff and not sure what to say. I think that I just want to say that to anyone who's thought about starting a blog, thought about starting a podcast. We all start from nothing. We all start from beginner status. And don't look at somebody's for Win. Don't look at her year 10 and compare it to your day one. Look at your day one and say, you know what, this is where I'm going to start. This is the best I can do today. And every single day, just commit to getting better and better and better. And one day you'll end up like a professional, like Win. You know, you'll get there. But it's just a matter of taking that first step and being willing to just start where you are with what you have and being confident in that. So I just want to add that for your audience, Win. I'm done talking now.
And Alex, where can people find you? Where can people get a hold of you if they choose to do so?
Yeah, the best place again is creatingabrand.com. Right now, I'll have a link for anybody from Win's audience there to join my private community. Even easier way, if you want to, just text the word Win to 1-904-299-8992, and I'll give you 6 free courses I have. 2 of those are the blogging ones. And again, that's just for Win's audience because I appreciate what she's doing. So, Win, thanks again for having me.
Thank you. No, thank you, Alex. And if you guys ever get to see Alex speak in person, do it. I know that speaking in person is not on people's docket right now, but if you ever get the chance to see Alex speak in person about blogging and podcasting, do it because it's phenomenal.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
And I hope you guys enjoyed another fabulous episode of Ask Win. Thanks to you guys.
You just listened to Ask Win, the podcast. To become a guest in the show, visit our website at askwin.weebly.com or call 816-591-3399. Just look for Danielle. Connect with Win on Twitter at WinKellyCharles and like our Facebook page at Butterflies of Wisdom. You can also purchase Win's book through Amazon.com or get a copy of the audiobook through Audible. Ask Win, the podcast.